Good morning, everybody. Welcome to DCC Today. This week we've been shooting on location, and instead of featuring a photo of the day, we have been the photo of the day. What a beautiful place we have to live, isn't it? Announcements coming up this week. Don't forget, day after tomorrow is our big summer celebration, our drive-in service at the Cole Farm on West Squim Bay Road, and I hope you're making plans to be there. We want everybody to come. The service is going to start at 10 o'clock. I would encourage you to be there by 9:30 so we can get cars parked. And it's going to be a great morning. A lot of just fun, encouraging things going on. If you've signed up for festival seating, at the time that we're recording this, we're still good to go for that. There is a possibility that it might get canceled if the county rolls the rules back on us because our case count has gone up some. And if that has happened, it'll be late breaking, and Shane will put a banner up right here to let you know. But if you don't see any banner right here telling you that that's been changed, then we're still good to go. Either way, festival seating or not, the drive-in service is on, and I hope we'll see all of you this Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. Also, coming up on September 13th, we're going to begin in-person church services again. We're going to start with one service at 9 o'clock at the church. We'll still be putting our service online. So we'll be pre-recording that, putting it online just like we always do. But for those that are comfortable and want to come to a live service, we'll be starting one at 9 o'clock. We'll have room for about 90 people because of the social distancing, and you will need to register ahead for that. The registration will be available online starting September 1st. So you would go to dcchurch.org, click the banner there, and you will need to reserve ahead for that service. So you can start thinking and planning toward that if that is something that you're ready to do. As far as this Sunday morning, I should mention as well, there will not be a church service online this Sunday. We want everyone to come to the drive-in service at the Cole Farm. We will record that service and we'll put it online later in the week. But when you get up Sunday morning, if your habit is always to just watch the service online, you won't have a service to watch. However, there will be something we'd like everyone to watch online on Sunday morning, maybe before you come to the service or after the service. And that is, we did a video of Kelly American's baptism. Kelly has come to us from China. She's now a part of our church family. She has made a commitment to Christ, and we got to share in her baptism. And I hope that you'll share in that by watching that video, and then maybe write Kelly a card just to encourage her, tell her you love her, you're praying for her. Even if you don't know Kelly personally, just let her know she's part of our big church family, and then just get that card to the church office and we'll get it to Kelly. Let's see, what else is happening? How about a devotional thought for the day? This comes out of Romans chapter 13, verse 11. The hour has come for you to wake from sleep, for salvation is nearer to us now than when we first believed. You know, when I was growing up, there was a lot of talk about, are we in the end times? And what are the signs of the end? And when you go back to the early days of the church, they were saying to each other at that point, the Lord's coming is near, it's at hand. And even Jesus said, we don't know the day or the hour. I don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out when it's going to happen because Jesus made it pretty clear that we're not going to know that exact time. One thing we do know, it is nearer now than it was. And what we're called to consistently is to live lives that are expectant and ready. And what that means is we're busy doing the things that Christ has called us to do. Loving others, serving others, dealing with sin in our own lives, growing in God's Word, being in prayer. Those are the things that people who are expectant, who are waiting for Christ, are busy doing. And Paul reminds us that while we may not know the exact day when Christ is coming, we know this, it is nearer now than it was before. So are we living like it? Well, we've got another segment today with Bob Bourquin telling his story of being a soldier and a prisoner of war in World War II. Let's listen to Bob.
And so we had a nice visit with these villagers, and then I came along and there's an old man sitting on the curb, and he doesn't have any shoes. And I thought, well, what the heck? So I took my shoe that I had, those, and I gave them to him. And he gets up and starts bowing to me and thanking me. And we spent the whole day just roaming around that village, being in contact with people. It was just amazing how good it was. I got the feeling, you know, that my hatred wasn't really intense anymore. I came back to the camp, and our own colors are flying over the camp on the flagpole. And what had happened was some of the guys had taken parachutes, different colors, and made an American flag. And so we stayed in the camp until about the 12th of September. I think it was September. And then we were told to go to Sapporo for evacuation. And the next morning, after we were told this, we boarded a train for Sapporo. And this is the funniest thing. I have no memory at all of leaving the prison. And I left my bundle of letters that I'd probably read 1,000 times. And I can't figure it out. I was very ill with asthma. And I think what happened is I just was so ill I have no recollection. But one of my buddies later on told me that we marched out and we marched out of the camp counting off. Left, my wife and 24 kids, left. It's one of the cadence we used to sing. Anyway, we marched down to the railroad station and boarded a train and went to Sapporo. I have no memory of the trip, getting on the train or anything, and my memory starts at Sapporo. And at Sapporo, we were taken aboard aircraft, and the pilot flew down towards Tokyo, and when he flew over, I guess it was Hiroshima, it might have been Nagasaki, but anyway, and he told us there was where the atomic bomb had been dropped. And I looked down, and it's all blackened, terrible sight. So we went towards the airport at Tokyo, and couldn't land because of fog. So we went back to Sapporo, and there was a small carrier tied up at the docks. So they took us aboard this carrier, the Kitsune. And from there I was taken to Guam, where I spent time recuperating. And I was on Guam about 9 days in the hospital. I was very sick. I felt like I could walk. So I told the nurse that I'd like to take and go up to the Marine Air Station. And it was about a mile. And so she gave me permission to go and told me to be careful of snipers, because there were still Japanese snipers even at this point, back in the hills in Guam. So I went up to the Marine Corps Air Station, the Naval Air Station, and on the gate, the entrance was a sign, Commanding Officer Tyler, Colonel Tyler, a full bird, and Executive Officer Stanley Pittman. And I just couldn't believe it, because Tyler was a captain when I first knew him. And Stanley Pittman was one of my corporals. I overranked him. So I went in, and Stanley is at the outer desk of his colonel, and he looks up and he says, "My gosh, Bourquin, we thought you were dead." He says, "Colonel, get out here." And the colonel came out, and we used to call him Tiny. He was a great big heavy guy. And we had a very close relationship of enlisted men and officers. We had nicknames for each other. Anyway, I says, "How are you, Tiny?" And he says, "Well, I'm a full bird now." He pointed his shoulder. And he says, "Good gosh, we thought you were dead." So anyway, and I told Stanley, "Oh, he's a major." And he, last I knew him, he was a corporal. He was in a different group. So anyway, the colonel gave me his car and a chauffeur, and and then I met him at the club, officers' club, and had dinner with him. And he gave me the car to go anywhere I wanted on the island. So he took me back to the hospital, and the colonel said, he says, "Stand by, close by a telephone, because in the next day or so, I'll be giving you a call." He says, "We're going to get you out of here by aircraft." So I thought I was going to have to wait and get on a ship, be 15 days. But the next day, I had a telephone call, and it was the colonel. He says, "Put on a shirt that doesn't have any chevrons, no sergeant chevrons or markings, and get your gear and get up here as soon as possible." He says, "I bumped a guy on a flight to the States." And he says, "It's yours." So I went up the airfield, boarded this old DC-3, I think it was. And it was full of admirals and captains, all kinds of brass. It almost knocked your eyes out. Brass all over the place. And here I am, a lowly sergeant. And I took a seat, and right next to me was Charlie Ruggles, the movie star. And I looked over at him, I said, "For gosh sakes, you're Charlie Ruggles." And he says, "Yes." And he introduced one of the ladies in the back, Mary Bryan, who's an old B star. So I started talking to Charlie, and he told me he was very tired. He'd been on tour, a USO tour. And he'd like to sleep, so he slept. I started talking to Mary Bryan and a sailor. There was one enlisted sailor, Seaman Howard, that had been given special permission to take his 2 children home. And what had happened, Seaman Howard was aboard a ship at Guam when the war broke out. So they left the harbor. He was married to a Guamanian girl and had 2 children, 2 little children, just infants. And the Japanese sunk his ship and captured him. So he never saw his wife or children for all the 4 years he was in prison. And when he was released, he was taken back to Guam to be reunited with his family, and found out his wife had been executed by the Japanese because she wouldn't become a love slave, they called him, of the Japanese officers. So they took her out and beheaded her. And the 2 children had grown up somewhat, and the grandparents raised the kids. So Howard had to come back to the fact that his wife had been beheaded. But anyway, he got the 2 kids back to the States, and the last I heard, they were doing fine, you know, and It's as bad as the fellow that was killed with the peaches. It's hard to think, of those things.
Well, I hope you enjoyed Bob's story. Thanks for joining us today. Looking forward to seeing all of you Sunday morning at the Cole Farm for our big summer celebration. I'm just really excited for that. Until then, have a great day and God bless.